Okay, so I think we're just going to get started now. Hopefully most people have joined and anyone who joins can sort of catch up, but we'll start with introductions. So I'm here with my colleagues Lucy and Catherine, and we all work in the Rivers Trust Data and Evidence team. And we provide ongoing support to the catchment-based approach partnerships. Today we're going to give you an overview and an introduction to the new CaBA Coastal and Estuarine Data Package. So this webinar is supported by the Wholescape Approach to Marine Management project, otherwise known as WAM, which aims to support a more collaborative approach between CaBA and coastal partnerships. Through training and workshops as well as webinars, we are aiming to build knowledge and expertise to enhance delivery for the coastal and estuarine environment nationwide. The aim is not to replicate existing portals, but to try and bring together coastal and catchment data with the aim of facilitating the adoption of a more collaborative approach to coastal and catchment management. So it's about that wholescape picture. We're very grateful to the European Maritime Fisheries Fund who have funded the project and are making all of these webinars and training sessions possible. So we're part of the CaBA Data and Evidence team, and we work with partnerships to bring together a national evidence base for each partnership. The partnerships make use of this evidence to develop a shared understanding of the issues in their catchment so that they can target their actions and funds where they're going to have multiple benefits for all stakeholders. It's by using an evidence-based approach that we maximize the likelihood that we're going to be doing the right thing in the right place where it's cost effective and makes a real difference so that you get the biggest bang for your buck, but also so that everybody agrees that we've done the right thing and enabling that bottom-up management of the environment by changing behaviour and aligning our funding streams wherever we can. Next slide, Lucy. The national evidence base is brought together into the CaBA Data Package, which some people on this call might be familiar with, or you might be completely new to it. But it's a collection of over 150 geospatial data sets from different sectors and government agencies. The data has been made easy to access and it's visualized to display the most relevant and important attributes. Quite often when you download data or access data, it's quite overwhelming and you don't necessarily know what it means. We've tried to overcome that for you. We also provide a guidance document with for both technical and non-technical users that will help you to interpret and understand complex data sets. And the data package is more than just open data. So what we do is we get access to some of the more difficult to license data sets that quite often there's too many barriers in place for individual partnerships to access them. And we make them available through a sort of CaBA-wide license agreement. Some examples of those sorts of data sets would be some of the source apportionment model outputs, water abstractions data, the CEH land cover map, and also the latest water industry national environment plan data. Next slide. So we want to empower local decision making to enable the bottom-up management of the environment. So to do this, what we encourage all of our partnerships to do is to develop a local evidence base on top of that national evidence that we've pulled together for them. So partnerships can bring together communities and identify those shared priorities and opportunities for blended finance. Partnerships add their own local data into the data package, and this often includes monitoring and modelling data that's focused on local issues and solutions, information on project activities to find out who else is working in the catchment, where and what they're doing. Sometimes data from water companies and other corporates. A lot of this commercially sensitive data is starting to be shared more and more often. And this is really important if the companies want to contribute to and benefit from a wholescape approach. We also find planning information from local authorities. This helps to highlight where there's development going on or where it's planned. and where the priorities are for developing blue or green infrastructure. We also encourage people to make the most of citizen science data, which has the capability to provide cost-effective monitoring, and quite often with higher spatial or temporal resolution than statutory or professional monitoring can achieve. And we've also found over the last few years working with CaBA partnerships that people find all sorts of other data that's often useful to their catchment and what their priorities are. So communicating vast amounts of data is really, really difficult. So it's important that partnerships try and keep it simple and bring it all together. But the data is never perfect. So if something at the tip of the iceberg doesn't look quite right, then it's important that both the partnerships and the communities can drill down into the detail to find out about the underlying assumptions. And that's where it's really important that these data packages are made available. So the easiest way to access the data package is through our online data portal. There's a URL on the slide, and we'll also share these links with you after the webinar. But some of the data sets in the data package are only available in the desktop package, and this is mostly due to licensing restrictions or perhaps due to the size of the files. So each CaBA partnership host is responsible for distributing the offline version of the data package to their partners. So coastal partnerships can request these data packages from their upstream catchments if they speak to the CaBA hosts. This ensures that we maximize the potential for collaboration and maintain the host position as a point of coordination within the partnership. We can also provide a custom clip of the data package to cover bespoke areas, but we do have to charge a processing fee for this. But if you're interested, then send us a message and we'll discuss it with you. So now over to my colleague Lucy, who's going to take you through the new coastal and estuarine data package that we've just added.
Thanks, Annika, and hello, everybody. So we're now going to take you through, as Annika said, the new coastal and estuarine data resources that we've been developing. So the coastal and estuarine data package is a set of over 30 online GIS layers that are specifically related to coastal, estuarine and marine environments. And it includes data from a whole range of different organisations, including MMO, the Environment Agency, Natural England, RSPB, CFAS, JNCC, Plant Life, National Trust and the Coastal Partnerships Network. And when we combine these new data layers with the wider CaBA data package that Annika was just talking about, this data can really help support a wholescape approach to marine management. So what's available in the new coastal and estuarine data package? There's many data sets that can help partnerships identify opportunities for collaboration based around themes such as habitat and wildlife, recreation and culture, socioeconomic factors and coastal erosion. For example, we've included a range of opportunity maps from the Environment Agency and the MMO, which highlight potential areas for salt marsh, seagrass and native oyster bed restoration. There's also data in there which can help identify issues and pressures in coastal and estuarine waters, including WFD classification data, information on plastic pollution, NVZ's bathing water status, plus data to help understand the characteristics of coastal waters, and also data to highlight strategic plans for the future. The datasets have been visualized to try and highlight key attributes, and where possible, we've customized the pop-ups to ease interpretation and provide links to further data sources. The data package is continually being developed, so please let us know if there are any key data sets missing which you think would be helpful to add, or if you have data that you'd also like to share via the package, then please do get in touch. So that's a flavour of the datasets that are available in the Coastal and Estuarine package. To find out what's available in the wider CaBA Data Package, you can take a look at the user guide, which colleague Catherine is going to talk about a little later on, or browse through the open data portal, which Annika mentioned. And there's many more datasets in there that can help identify opportunities for collaboration between coastal and catchment partnerships. So how can you access all the new resources in the Coastal and Estuarine Data Package? The easiest way is via a new page that we've set up on the CaBA Open Data Portal called Working Groups, which is available at the link shown on the screen. And the aim of this page is to provide easy access and point people in the direction of data and evidence related to each of the different CaBA working group themes. And as you'll see if you go to the page, the coasts and estuaries is the first to be added, but we will be adding more for the other working groups soon. So from this page, there's a number of routes you can take to access the data. You can click on the link to browse all the data. To find out more about each of the layers, if you're an ArcGIS user, you can request to join the CaBA Coastal and Estuarine ArcGIS group. This makes it easier for you to search for and add datasets from the package into desktop GIS and online maps, and we'll demo this a little later on in the webinar. You can launch the Coastal Data Explorer web app from here to view the data without the need for any specialist GIS software. And again, we'll give a little demo of that in a moment or two. And there's also a link so that you can find out more information about the WAM project. And this includes access to all the presentations from the 2 regional workshops held in the North East and South East earlier this year. And we'll also add a link to this recorded webinar from the page. So if you click through the link there to browse the open data layers and then choose a layer of interest to you, it'll open up a page like you can see on the screen now. And this is where you can find out more details about the data set. You can find out the date of the last update, which is useful to know how current the data is, a description of the data with maybe links to extra guidance and resources. Helpfully, you can find any license terms or acknowledgements that you need to use if you're using the data. And from here, you can also download the data in a variety of open data formats to use in your own GIS and mapping software, for example, QGIS, and you can also access API links if you're developing web services. You can also add any of these layers into ArcGIS Online maps and story maps. We don't have time to cover the story maps today, but this could form the topic of a subsequent webinar if there's demand for this. So please let us know if that would be something of help to people. So I'm now just going to give a bit of an introduction to the Coastal Data Explorer. As I mentioned, this is a simple web application which enables you to explore all the coastal and estuarine data online without the need for any specialist GIS software or GIS licenses or particular experience required. The Explorer has the option to add any of the online coastal data package layers, plus you can add any of the online layers from the wider CaBA Data Package, which enables you to start bringing coastal and catchment data together to support a Wholescape approach. And we've also categorized key layers from both data packages into groups for opportunities, issues, characteristics, causes, monitoring and base mapping, so that it follows the same structure as the wider CaBA Data Package. So I'm now going to give a bit of a demo of the Explorer and introduce some of the functionality that's available. So one of the first key things you can use the Explorer for is to find your neighbouring CaBA and coastal partnerships and get in touch with them. And these layers open by default when you access the app. So if you click on a catchment outline for one of the CaBA partnerships or a blue dot for one of the coastal partnerships, you'll open a pop-up with the partnership name. For CaBA partnerships, there's also a link to the partnership website where you can find out more information and contact details. We don't yet have a contact link for coastal partnerships, but hopefully this is something we might be able to add in the future. And there's lots of icons around the screen that give you access to the different functions. So I'm just going to introduce some of those to you now. So first, you can zoom in and out of the map. You can use the icons at the bottom of the screen to browse and add the data layers to the map. So you can search through either all the online CaBA Coastal data layers or all the online catchment data layers, or you can search by the filtered groups such as opportunities, issues, etc. Once you've found a layer of interest, you can use the add remove function to add the layers. And if you click on details, that's highlighted at number 3, you'll find out more information about each of the layers, including the data owner, any license restrictions, and links to further guidance. You can use the icons at the top right to view the legend, change the base map, and open the layer list. And just some useful functions within the layer list widget. You can turn layers on and off, and if you click on the more options, the 3 little dots, you can do things like alter the transparency of the different layers and the order in which they're appearing to improve the visibility of the map that you want to look at. You can also view the attribute table for many of the data layers via the table icon in the bottom right. And just a tip here, if the layer you're interested in looking at doesn't appear in the attribute table at first, if you go back to the layer list widget and click view in attribute table, that should switch it on for you. So as well as the icons around the screen, you can also click on the map features themselves to open up pop-ups for most of the data sets. And we've customized many of these to make the attributes more accessible and understandable, and to link through to further information sources, such as the Environment Agency's Catchment Data Explorer and Bathing Water Explorer. And a little sort of top tip for you, if you see one of a number in the top left of the pop-up, in this case it's saying 1 of 3, if you click on the small arrow to the right, you can view any underlying pop-ups. So sometimes you have pop-ups stacked on top of each other, and this happens where there's a number of data layers that overlap, or there's points that are close to each other. So the final thing we're going to show in terms of functionality for the Data Explorer is how you can select data for your area of interest and export the data to use in your own analysis. So in this example, we've zoomed into Morecambe Bay and we've added the consented discharges layer from the Environment Agency, which we filtered to identify outfalls which discharge directly to coastal and tidal waters. So if you click on the select tool from the bottom icon bar and then choose the layers that you want to be selectable by making sure only those layers are checked in the layer list. Then if you click on the green select button and hold the left mouse button down and drag across your area of interest, you will highlight and select only the data points of interest. You can now click on the more options 3 dots button again next to the layer of interest and choose from various functions to export the selected data. So you can export it to a CSV file to use in Excel, or you could create a new ArcGIS Online layer for your data, or just view the selected data in the attribute table. So that's an overview of the Data Explorer, and as a reminder of all the different functions, if you click on the Help button on the Explorer, it'll bring up a summary for you. So moving on, we're now going to demonstrate how you can open some of these online layers in desktop GIS so that you can begin to integrate them with your existing GIS projects, such as the CaBA Desktop Data Package. The Desktop Data Package contains additional data sets that aren't available online due to licensing restrictions. And also by bringing layers into desktop, you can begin to integrate them with your own local data sources. So just as a reminder, if you're a coastal partnership, you can request access to the CaBA Desktop Data Package from your upstream CaBA hosts who can share it with collaborative partners. So I'm going to be using ArcGIS Pro for this demonstration. This is the next generation of Esri desktop software, and it's available for free to anyone with an ArcGIS desktop license. And just a reminder, for those of you who are non-profit organisations, you might be eligible for the Esri non-profit programme, which gives you access to the software at a highly reduced rate. So before we start, I'm just going to give a quick overview of some of the tools that are available in ArcGIS Pro for people that are new to Pro or maybe thinking about switching from ArcMap. So in the top left, you have a quick access toolbar, which you can customize to add your most commonly used tools and buttons. The most important is the save button. Always remember to save your changes, and we've learned from a bit of experience to do that. And use the Explore button to navigate around the map and identify features through pop-ups. Use the drop-down to filter the selectable layers. The ribbon tabs along the top allow you to switch between different functionality, just like you would have in a Microsoft Office application. For example, you can click the Share tab to view options for sharing your map and associated layers. The little dialog box launchers that you find open panes or dialog boxes with more functionality. In the top right, you can see your active portal, which is showing you which of your ArcGIS account and organisation licenses you're currently linked to. So you can click this button to sign in and out, but be aware that you need to be signed in to activate your licence unless you've checked out your licence for offline use. Number 6 is your main active view window that displays the map or workspace or visualization. And along the top of that, you have the different view tabs, which can help you switch between different views. So the CaBA Data Package is already set up with 3 tabs. The catalogue showing the linked data folders, the main map viewer, and also a layout where you can set out your template for printing out maps. And then the contents pane shows the list of layers available in the map. And you want to click the little side arrows to expand the different categories and view the layers, and tick the boxes to switch on the layers of the map. So that was just a quick overview of some of the functionality available in Pro, and we just put a little reminder of the different functions here if you're watching the webinar back on the video to remind you. So moving on to how you can now pull data layers from ArcGIS Online into your desktop. So first, you want to make sure that you've joined the CaBA Coastal and Estuarine Data Package group, which you can request to join via the link shown on the screen, which is the easiest way to search for the coastal data. You can also request to join the overall CaBA Online Data Package as well to access all the layers that are available. So what you want to do is click Add Data on the top toolbar, and then under Portal option in the dialog menu, select Groups and double-click on CaBA Coastal and Estuarine Data Package group. And then you want to scroll through the layers and select the layer that you've chosen to add to your map and click OK, and that'll pull the layer into your map, and then you can move it into whichever section you like in the contents window pane. So for example, here we've selected the nitrate vulnerable zones. Okay, so now that you can pull the coastal data layers into the wider CaBA Data Package, it enables you to begin to integrate the coastal and catchment data to support a Wholescape approach. So just an example of some of the layers that you might want to use in doing this. For example, in coastal areas, say with eutrophication issues, it could be helpful to look at some of the following data sets to help identify potential sources of issues and identify opportunities for collaboration with your neighbouring coastal or catchment partnerships. So in terms of opportunities, you might want to look and see where others might be facing similar issues in the catchment, for example, with groundwater or surface water eutrophication. and identify opportunities where you could link up with their priorities. For example, take a look at the Natural England Stewardship Priorities layer, water company drinking water safeguard zones, and there's also layers in there around actions planned under the Water Industry National Environment Plan. You might want to look to see where there could be opportunities to enhance natural capital or protect sensitive habitats, or where there might be opportunities to install natural flood risk management schemes and manage runoff. So by looking through and identifying all these joint priorities, we can become more joined up and begin to develop sort of real multi-benefit projects. You can then begin to look at data sets that are available under the causes section to find insights as to where some of the problems and pressures might be coming from. So for example, in the case of coastal eutrophication, some of the following layers might be helpful to have a look at. You might want to look at some of the modelled source apportionment data from the separate or SAGES models, point source pollution data such as consented discharges and records of pollution incidents. There's also a range of different diffuse pollution data layers in there, such as GIS estimates of manure loadings and modelled NEPEN nitrate losses. And you could also begin to bring it together with citizen science data. For example, we've got data from the Freshwater Watch Citizen Sciences initiative in there. You might also find many of the characteristics datasets helpful. For example, there's a lot of datasets in there on land cover, weather and climate, soils, groundwater, that can help you understand the upstream character of the contributing catchments. And these datasets can also be particularly valuable inputs in terms of further modelling studies, and also helpful in planning investigative monitoring studies that you might be looking to carry out. So as Annika mentioned earlier, the CaBA Data Package is really only the beginning of bringing all this data together. It's also really valuable to bring in your own local data and to share with partners and add in their data to develop a sort of truly collaborative approach built around a sound evidence base. So I'm now going to hand you over to my colleague Catherine, who's going to tell you a bit more about the user guide and the information you can find in there.
Thanks, Lucy, and thanks to everybody who's joined the webinar this afternoon. So yes, as Lucy said, to go alongside the data, there's also a user guide that we've produced, and that contains much more detailed information about each layer. So there's information about where the data came from in the source. There's also a file name or web service link, so you can access the data yourself. There's full details on the licenses and any attribution statements that need to go alongside the data. And there's also a much fuller interpretation of each data set, looking at what the data shows and what it means. And there are additional sections to suggest local data sets that might be accessed for your particular area. Could we go on to the next slide, Lucy? Thanks. So the data package is collated from a variety of sources with different licensing restrictions, and all the data used must comply with those licenses to make sure that the coastal and CaBA partnerships are recognized as responsible and trusted users of data and evidence. And it's really important that you go through the user guide and check for any copyright and attribution statements, because we need to use this data responsibly and seek additional advice if you're unsure about whether any of the licenses are suitable for what you're applying them to. Because any breach in licensing restrictions or misuse of the data could really negatively impact on the reputation of CaBA and coastal partnerships. So again, just please keep checking the user guide for any attribution statements and licensing. On this slide, we can see some of the most common licenses that you're likely to come across. So the first one is the Open Government License. data can be copied, published, distributed, and adapted for commercial and non-commercial purposes. However, when you're publishing the data, you must provide acknowledgements where that's necessary. And again, these acknowledgements can be found in the user guide alongside the description of the data. Some data sets are under an Environment Agency conditional license. So the EA tried to license information under a open government license where that's possible. However, where it's not possible, for example, if there's third-party data or it's subject to special conditions, then an EA conditional license will be used. There are also Esri licenses, so this data can only be used by organizations with a valid Esri license. Creative Commons licenses, they're something that many organizations, institutions, and governments are using at the moment. So all Creative Commons data should include an attribution statement. This attribution statement will be different depending on the level of adaptation or commercial use that's allowed under it. So again, it's really important to check the specific attribution statement of Creative Commons data. Ordnance Survey Open Data License is something that you'll come across quite a lot. It's the same as the Open Government License, but ensures that the attribution is to Ordnance Survey. And finally, a really important one will be listed as CaBA only. So this data, as been mentioned earlier, is data that's been obtained through a special license for a CaBA partnership, and it can't be shared or republished. So as a coastal partnership, you can access this data if you're working directly with your CaBA partnership, and then they've provided you a copy of the data package, but you can only use it within the purposes of that collaborative work. So if you're a CaBA partner, but you're working on a commercial contract outside of the partnership, then you wouldn't be licensed to use those data sets. As I say, all this information on licenses and attribution statements can be found in the user guide. And if you've got any additional concerns about licensing of CaBA specific data, that's the one license for CaBA use only, then please get in touch with us. Our contact email is on a later slide that we'll get to in a second. Okay. So the next steps, the first thing that we encourage everybody to do is to go onto the online Data Explorer and find your corresponding coastal or catchment partnership. You can then use the data on the online Explorer and the desktop CaBA Data Package to identify common issues and opportunities for delivering projects together. We're also planning on organising some additional webinars, and we'd be really interested to know which topics would be most useful to you. And finally, we do have some limited one-to-one technical support available through the WHAM project, which we can provide to support collaboration between coastal and catchment partnerships. And in terms of further resources that we have available, make sure that you make the use of the CaBA website and have a look at the discussion forum and the Learn section. There's a huge library of resources available on there, and it's not just data, so it's really worth a look. And it would be great to improve this resource with more examples of coastal best practice. So if you have any materials that you think would be really valuable to share, then please get in touch with us directly about that. And finally, make sure that you signed up to the CaBA mailing list, because that's a really good way of keeping in touch with upcoming news and events. We'll take some questions now. If you'd like to add them directly into the chat section. We'd be really keen to hear if you've got any suggestions for additional data sets that you'd like to see in the Coastal Data Package, or any future training or support that you'd find useful. So yeah, let's fire away with some questions. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. So we got first question here from Steve Lowe, and he's got 3 questions actually. We'll just start with the first one. Is local site data included? Lucy, I don't know if you want to answer that one.
Yep. Okay. Steve. So the data sets that are included in the data package are typically national data sets that are available that can be used by all partnerships. So there isn't sort of specific local data sets included, but the way you can pull the data sets in desktop GIS should enable you to integrate that with your local data. Obviously, there is quite a lot of information. If you sort of look at the pop-ups in your local area, you will be sort of accessing local information for your area.
Brilliant. And the next question then is whether this links into the NBN or local record centres. And I can answer this one. Unfortunately, it doesn't. So local record centres in particular have quite inconsistent licensing, we've found, and usually their data isn't open source. They'll charge some kind of fee to access it or process it for you. So we can't add it into the data package at the moment, but we have been working to try and release data from record centres. It's something that people have been working on for some time. But in the meantime, we'd recommend that you talk to your local record centre directly. And if you try and engage with your local environmental NGOs, ENGOs, because quite often they've sent data to the record centres themselves, and you can access it directly through them without paying any fees. And in terms of NBN, because it's updated so regularly, and they don't have an API at the moment that we can sort of pull out the data on a live link, again, it's such vast quantities of data in their database that we recommend you just sort of go and find what you're looking for and extract it as and when you want to use it. If you need any help doing that, then obviously CaBA partnerships can get in touch with us in the support team. And then the next question was about confidence levels for data sets. And you've said that you found considerable variation in the local ground truthing. We don't apply any confidence levels to the data in the data packages. This is mostly because different data tends to be appropriate for different uses, and really sort of the quality or the type of data that you're looking at depends on how you want to use the data. So we don't want to mislabel anything. But what we'd recommend is that when you're going to use data, you use your local knowledge. You perhaps think about where the data's come from and what process it went through when they were collecting it, and whether there was any QA, QC processes, so quality control on the data. So really it's about sort of deciding on what you think is appropriate for your application at the time. But having said that, we are doing some work potentially setting up a cooperative, a monitoring cooperative, and part of that would include sort of trying to assign some level of confidence or perhaps some guidance on what data is appropriate for what uses, but that's in the pipeline, so keep your eye out.
Yeah, one additional thing maybe just to add to that question is that we really recommend taking a weight of evidence approach to using the data package. So for certain issues, there might be a number of different data sets, for example, a number of different model outputs from source apportionment. So if they're all sort of pointing you in the same direction as something being an issue, then it's probably quite likely that it is an issue. But if you're finding sort of varying results between the different data sets, then it's probably an area where you need to look into more detail in terms of the confidence levels and sort of ground truthing that in your local area.
Yeah. Another question here from Natasha about common licenses, asking if a key could be shown for each. I think you're referring to the image that was on that slide. That's actually referring only to the Creative Commons license. But if you look on the CaBA Data site, in the licenses page, there are pictures for the other licenses and a description for each of them to say what they mean.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Annika, in the user guide, each data set has a specific credit and license associated with it. So that's all clear in the user guide.
Yeah. Okay, and Kate Ansell has asked, if we want to pull off maps for publications or websites, are we allowed to do so? And if so, how do we reference them? That's maybe one for you, Catherine.
Yes, you can pull the data off as long as that's allowable under the license. So have a look at the user guide and refer to it to see if that's okay. And the attribution statement will be in the user guide as well. So just to make sure that you use the full attribution statement for each data set.
Yeah, so if you're sharing a map in a publication that uses Ordnance Survey data, then you just need to make sure that you're acknowledging them using that attribution statement in the publication, either in the sort of caption or at the end of the document. Ross Brown has asked, are you intending to link with Magic? And the answer to that is no. So a lot of the data that we actually have on the CaBA data portal and in the CaBA data package is pulled directly from the same sources that are used in the Magic platform. So you don't need to worry that the data might be different in either one. They should be referencing the same API, if you like, so the same underlying data set online. So we're not trying to sort of, we are linking with Magic in a certain sense, but it's sort of behind the scenes, and we won't be looking to merge Magic with CaBA.
And I think that's probably a similar answer to the question from Alan about linking with the MMO's Marine Information System Explorer. And I think one thing that we just try to say is that we're not trying to replicate any of the existing explorers that are out there. What we're hoping to do is to be able to sort of bring together the catchment and coastal data that's particularly helpful for partnerships to use in both in sort of targeting and monitoring and developing actions and collaborative working.
Anthony Firth is asking, how far offshore does your coastal data extend? And I think that probably depends on the data set. Catherine or Lucy?
Yeah, it completely depends on the data sets. Some of them, we've got some seabed mapping from the EU, and that extends a long way out, but then a lot of the data sets are right on the coast. So yeah, it really depends on the data set itself.
Yeah, it's probably worth adding in terms of the coastal data, we've pulled the data sets from all the data owners, so we haven't done any clipping to that. So the extent that you'll find is the full extent as the data owner provided.
Yeah. And then Steve Lowe is asking about LRCs, or local sites, which are often as good, if not better, than designated sites. So if there's no layer available, is there a way that we can remind users to check this with the LRC or local sites group?
I think it's something that we could add into the user guide, isn't it, to refer to some local data if it's available?
Yeah, so I should highlight that in the CaBA data package, although we only include mostly the national data sets, within the user guide we do add in sort of sections to remind people where they can go to find local data. So that's definitely something that we could look at doing with the coastal data package as well. So if anyone has any other suggestions for other local data sets that they think is important that CaBA partnerships or coastal partnerships look out for or request from another organisation, then please let us know.